My name is Cole. It's not my real name, but a nickname I got when I was in the Special Forces. I'm not 195 centimeters tall and weigh 113 kilograms, not even close. I'm barely 5 feet 10 inches and weigh about 180 pounds. No one believed I could make it through Special Forces training, but I was determined to prove them wrong. We celebrated the end of training at a bar where I was nicknamed Cole because I was much smaller than the giants in my group. An hour later, the celebration was over, but the party continued. I found a spot at the bar and ordered a beer. A beautiful girl sat down next to me and said, "Hi, Cole. Would you buy a girl a beer?" I nodded to the bartender and asked her how she knew my name. She nodded toward Derek. Derek was our leader, a giant man with a killer stare that made men wet their pants. At that moment, I was the object of one of those stares. At the time, I didn't know him well. Later, I learned that he was mostly a gentle giant, but if you got into trouble, you couldn't find a better person to have by your side. Tessa said she was Derek's younger sister and a nurse at a military hospital. The more she talked, the more her eyes sparkled like sapphires, and the more I fell in love with her. But I cursed myself. Military marriages have the highest divorce rate in the country, so I hoped to meet my future Mrs. List after I finished my service. Man thinks, God laughs. It was late at night, and I went to the bathroom before returning to the barracks. On my way back, I saw Tessa playing with my phone. "Can I help you?" I asked. "It's okay, I just entered my number in your phone so you can call me and ask me out on a date," she said, kissed me on the cheek, and left with Derek. God was still laughing 9 months later when Tessa and I exchanged vows. Derek said at the reception that Tessa always got what she wanted, and she had wanted me from the day they walked into that bar. Later, Derek came up to me and I asked, "Now you're going to warn me not to hurt her?" List, if I felt I had to warn you, you would never have been able to buy her that first beer. The 2 years with Tessa were wonderful. My time in the army wasn't so great. Too many missions, too many deaths at my hands. I quickly became a sniper. They wanted to rename me Headshot, because that's where my bullets usually ended up. But I was so far removed from the real carnage. They were just green dots on my night vision goggles, moving in the wrong direction. When my targets fell, I began to wonder if they were men, women, or children. These events haunted me more and more in my dreams. During one operation, I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't notice someone sneaking up behind me. We fired at the same time. Of course, his face exploded and he hit my leg. I didn't realize that the bullet had hit an artery. The TC ordered us to regroup and I told him I was bleeding. When I stood up, I lost consciousness. I came to somewhere when the TC and someone else were carrying me back to the helicopter. The second time I woke up, I was in a military hospital in Germany. A day later, I was on a military transport returning to the States. I didn't stay in the hospital long, and since Tessa worked there, she visited me often, but there was something strange about her. Before I was discharged, a strange man came into my room. He was missing his right arm and there were serious scars visible under his collar. "Good morning, List. How's your leg?" "It's getting better." "Do I know you?" "No, you don't know me. We're a group of people who can no longer serve in the military and are trying to help military wives. They don't usually know about us. We mostly observe and or try to prevent anything bad from happening, such as drinking, drug use, or running away. As for Tessa, I have to tell you that she cheated on you while you were away. It was the only time. Most guys choose to ignore casual nighttime escapades. Some let their egos get in the way. Fortunately, that's not our business. I'm sorry to break the news to you." He stood up and left without saying goodbye or shaking my hand. He just walked out. I was stunned. Damn, we had just celebrated our 3rd anniversary. Still lost in my thoughts, I heard my doctor come in and discharge me. Damn, I had to get home to Tessa. I called a taxi to take me home. When I got to the door, Derek was just coming out and hugged me. I went inside and saw Tessa sitting at the table crying. She ran toward me. But I raised my hands to stop her. "I'm so sorry, List. Apologies only help you, Tessa. I need to take a shower and go to bed." We didn't talk anymore. I took a shower and went to bed. Tessa beat me there. She was wearing her classic pajama shorts and t-shirt, which I always found sexier than underwear. I got into bed and turned away from her. She was crying and I was angry. She pulled me toward her, laid her head on my chest, and continued crying. Hearing her cry broke my heart more than her infidelity. Finally, I kissed her on the forehead. She looked up and kissed me on the lips. We continued. "I can wait," she said with a sad smile on her face. We fell asleep like that. And in the morning, It seemed like a violent storm had passed during the night, and the world was back in order. A few weeks later, we were sitting in a bar with Derek and Tessa. A guy walked up to Tessa and said, "Is this your Special Forces husband, little weakling?" Not being the biggest Special Forces guy, I was usually a target for drunk idiots looking for a reason to brag. It never ended well for them. Tessa was terrified. Maybe this was the guy she had slept with. But he didn't match the description my mysterious friend had given me. The drunk idiot wanted me to go outside with him. Normally, I would have refused, but not this time. He walked ahead and I followed him. When I walked through the door, he tried to hit me from behind, but I used the door to hit him in the face and knock him back. While he was lying on the ground with a bloody nose, I told him not to get up. Being a drunk fool, he got up and lunged at me. I helped him up and sent him flying through the same door. I ordered him to lie down again, but he didn't listen. This time, he raised his fists in a boxing stance. I lost my self-control, was overcome with rage, and began hitting him in the face. He didn't just stand there, but tried to dodge and weave, occasionally throwing useless punches that didn't land. His face continued to take all my blows. Both his lips were split, blood was flowing from his mouth and nose. It's amazing he could see me as his eyes were swollen shut. I was like a machine, left, right, nose, eye, mouth, round and round. Finally, Derek grabbed me and pulled me away. The drunk fool was still standing there, dodging and weaving, punching no one. Tessa was upset that I had driven home. "You didn't have to do that." He was ready before he even raised his fist. "You scared me. Why did I have to ask Derek to stop you? You've been in fights in bars before, but you've never acted like this. Why?" "I don't know, Tessa, it didn't even occur to me to stop. It's my fault you punished him. He wasn't that guy." "I know he wasn't that guy. I asked him twice not to gun children with bullet wounds to the head. All of Jairus was calling for an end to the senseless slaughter of innocent women and children. They weren't all that innocent. The terrorists had sent them into battle alongside their soldiers in hopes of breaking through our defenses. I knew that, but those images haunted me in nightmares and during subsequent military operations. My mysterious stranger also told me that Tessa had started coming out again, as he put it. Tessa went out every time we went on a mission. One time when I came back, we started fooling around on the couch after a lot of wine. I lost control, grabbed her by the neck, and lifted her off the couch. I didn't choke her, just held her in the air, and with one flick of my wrist, I could have broken her neck. When I put her back on the couch, the horror was reflected on both our faces. "I'm sorry, Tessa," I begged. "Sorry is just for you. Least, what were you thinking?" Her face contorted with horror again, and she ran to the bedroom and locked the door. According to my mysterious stranger, Tessa hadn't been with anyone for about a year. After another operation, he returned with a new report. This time, it wasn't a one-night stand. She was sleeping with Blake Turner regularly and hardly ever came home. I was trying to make sense of this news while unpacking my things when Derek called with word of an urgent operation. An hour later, we were on our way. I threw my things in a bag and left Tessa a note saying we needed to talk about Blake. On the plane, Derek told us about the mission. We had to defuse a bomb. As in other cases, there were no good positions for a sniper. I begged Derek to take me with him, and this time he agreed. The entrance went smoothly. We found 3 women downstairs and sat them on the sofa. I stayed with them while the others went upstairs. I was listening to the radio when the woman on the right took off her headdress and pulled an automatic rifle from under her skirt. We aimed at each other like in an old western. My shot tore her face apart. She fell and started shooting blindly, but I was wounded in the ankle, knee, and side. I tore the faces of the other 2 women apart. One of them must have been holding the detonator because there was a huge explosion. Everything seemed to slow down. The blast threw me back. The back wall blew out, and I could see the neighboring house until the roof started collapsing. Then I felt intense pain as shrapnel rained down on me. I woke up on a plane and then in a military hospital in Germany. It wasn't like the last time I was there. I was much more seriously wounded and felt that some parts of my body weren't working. I spent most of the next 2 weeks in a coma while the doctors tried to piece me back together and remove everything that didn't belong in my body. My face was bandaged and I couldn't see anything. I broke through the narcotic haze and realized I was strapped to a stretcher in a military transport. The next day, I felt myself coming back to consciousness. I still couldn't see. A man was asking me questions, and I tried to answer. We played this game for 3 days before we could have a normal conversation. Introducing himself as my doctor, he wanted to examine my injuries. Most of your body was riddled with the small pieces of shrapnel that these bombs are filled with. They've been removed. The bullet from your ankle was taken out. It didn't cause any serious damage. The bullet in your wounds." He paused and took a deep breath. This is where it got interesting. Why was I blindfolded and couldn't see anything? A piece of shrapnel tore your left eye, we couldn't save it. We've bandaged both eyes for now. The muscles in your left eye will try to follow the right one. We need them to heal and stop bleeding. I think we'll be able to remove the bandages in 2 weeks. Any questions? I said no. My military career was over. You can't be a sniper with one eye. They gave me some medicine and I fell back asleep. When I woke up, Derek was sitting by my bed. He told me about the operation. It was a real mess. 3 of our guys who were upstairs were seriously injured when the house collapsed. It took an hour to pull the 4 of us out from under the rubble, and he was sure I was dead. The whole thing was a mess from the start. There was no bomb-making equipment. Derek said the other guys were recovering and would probably return to duty. He didn't say anything about me. On his way out, he said, "Tessa wants to see you." I told her to wait, considering the whole Blake Turner thing. "My sister has really let me and our whole family down, and I'm sorry she's putting you through this. It couldn't have happened to a better guy at a worse time." "I need time, Derek. I'm just not ready to deal with this right now. Maybe when the bandages are off my face and I can see out of my other eye, sooner or later I'm going to have to see her." Derek nodded in agreement. They gave me a button so I could take painkillers on my own. I pressed the button 3 times and drifted off into dreamland, or rather nightmare land, as the gunfire and explosion continued to echo in my head. I woke up when someone touched my genitals and realized I was being washed with a sponge. "I hope you're not too hot," I said. A rough male voice replied, "Well, many ladies think so." We both laughed. His name was Noel, like the French Haitian Noel, and we became good friends. Several times I regained consciousness and felt Tessa lying on my chest, crying. She was in the room when the bandage was removed from my eye, standing off to the side. I was given a mirror so I could see the scars around my eye. A glass eye and plastic surgery would restore my beauty. This seemed to make everyone laugh. Meanwhile, a large bandage was placed over my left eye. When everyone left, Tessa came up to me in tears, but I raised my hand to stop her. She jumped back as if I had hit her. "We need to talk about Blake, Tessa. You have to end it with him." There was a pause, a hesitation that broke my heart. "Can't we talk about this? You already gave me your answer, Tessa. It's over." "But Blake said that if you really love me, you can share me. I love both of you and I don't want to choose between you." I knocked over the nightstand and Noel ran into the room. I raised my hand to stop her. "Listen to me, Tessa. First of all, I don't want to hear Blake said anymore. Second, he obviously doesn't know me very well. You obviously don't know me very well, and I have no idea who you are. Now get out of my room. I don't want to see you again." Tessa ran out in tears, and I started pressing the pain button while Noel checked my vitals. I used my next moment of consciousness to call a lawyer and file for divorce. He was kind enough to come to the hospital to see me. Tessa got the papers 3 days later after her shift. My rehabilitation was progressing. I could walk, although most people didn't consider it walking. I could do without a bedpan. Noel and I were happy. I learned that he had been a combat medic until he lost his leg in battle. Tessa still came to my room when I was asleep and cried on my chest. I was sitting at the table in my room when Tessa and Blake walked in. "You're out of your mind, Tessa," I shouted, and Noel entered the room. "He's my lawyer, List. I have the right to consult with him when we discuss the divorce. I'm not stupid, Tessa, and your so-called lawyer knows that in his presence, these conversations are meaningless without my lawyer." Blake said, "List, this doesn't have to end in divorce." Twice a week. His team was leaving again. It was their first assignment without my support, and he was worried. Our conversation turned to Tessa. She had already been ostracized by most of the hospital staff, and her stunt with Blake had alienated the few who wanted to remain impartial. Her boss was demanding her dismissal. Using her position as a hospital employee to ambush me with a lawyer was an abuse of her position. She could quit or be fired. Tessa moved in with Blake. The next week, my lawyer called and said that Tessa had signed the papers and the divorce would be final in 90 days. I continued my rehabilitation and stayed in the house. Tessa did not claim any rights to it and took no action. The knee replacement happened sooner than expected. Surprisingly, the pain got worse after the surgery. Derek said that Tessa married Blake right after the divorce was finalized. All of her relatives and friends, including him, refused to attend the ceremony. Only Blake's relatives and friends came. Derek said he still talks to her once a week and that she is still his sister. He said he couldn't remember the last time he saw her smile and that even in her wedding photos, she looks unhappy. She can't find a job, even though there is a severe shortage of nurses in the area. During my next visit, Derek told me that Tessa had filed for divorce from Blake. They had been married less than a month. Blake was acting like a jerk about the divorce. He had spent a lot of money on the crappy wedding and felt that Tessa hadn't given the relationship enough time. They had been together for over 6 months. Derek said he had to visit Blake in person to get him to agree to the divorce. Several members of our group also visited him every day until he gave in. They respected my wishes and didn't hurt him. They scared the hell out of him, and he used a loophole in the law to free Tessa from the marriage. 3 months later, Derek called me and asked me to meet him at our usual bar. I was sitting at the bar waiting for Derek when I heard, "Hey Least, buy a girl a beer." There was Tessa, looking tired and older. I nodded to the bartender. We sat there looking at each other. Tessa didn't take a sip of her beer, but immediately buried her face in my shoulder and cried. I held her close, sure that I was crying too. Finally, I kissed her on the forehead. She looked up and kissed me on the lips. We continued kissing, not passionately, but rather tenderly, like the first kisses with your first girlfriend. "Let's go," I said, nodding to Derek, who was hiding in the corner. We went back home. The kissing continued where we had left off. Tessa started to unbutton my shirt. She stopped and looked at me. "It's too soon?" she asked. "No," I said, picked her up and carried her to our bedroom. We went to a psychologist. Well, I went to fix my relationship with Tessa, and I also saw another psychologist to work through some anger issues related to my combat experience. Tessa said she had kept trying to break up with Blake, but he always convinced her to continue seeing him. He even convinced her that if I really loved her, I would let her see him. She wanted to know why I wasn't more decisive when she cheated on me the other times. "I loved you, Tessa. It hurt me a lot when you cheated on me, and I knew when you were leaving and who you were with. I also knew that it must have been hard for you when I was away for surgery. I wasn't indifferent, but if you needed it when I was gone, I was willing to turn a blind eye to the occasional indiscretion. What about you, List? You never cheated as you call it, maybe with a prostitute in another country." "No, Tessa, I never cheated." "Why, were you afraid that Derek would kick your ass? Every time we left, there was a risk I wouldn't come back. And if that happened, I wanted your lips to be the last I kissed. And if I came back, your lips would be the first and only ones I kissed."